Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of March 28th to April 3rd. I do want to start off by saying there won't be any video game review for this week, though. I have some, family coming over, and we're going to be spending some quality time, mostly doing somewhat of a late Passover kind of dinner and all with family and all, so there won't be any for this week, though. Perhaps maybe next week and all that stuff. And also, hopefully you guys didn't fall for a lot of the April Fool's gags that have come out on April 1st, in terms of including ones that I think kind of go straight to the heart, which is someone putting up a false trailer for Super Mario RPG 2, which, let's be honest, a lot of us would love to see an actual sequel to Legends of the Seven Stars. I personally would, to be exact. So some of the April Fool's jokes out there were, I think, maybe be a bit far-fetched. Some were clever, and some were like you could see coming like a mile away. Like, I remember a couple years ago, I think one did a joke about how the Umbrella Corporation needed a bailout and all that. So that was like, you could kind of see that one coming a mile away and all. But anyway, though, we do have 4 stories to cover for this week, including the future of Cyberpunk 2077 plus CDProject Red, some interesting information about Project Triangle, the next game from Square Enix that uses the same HD 2D graphics that we use in my personal favorite from 2018, Octopath Traveler. Though we do have reports about Monster Hunter Rise in terms of sales numbers, and it seems to be off to a good start, and comments made from the development studio Mistwalker, including from the original creator of the Final Fantasy games, about this possibly being his last game, not to mention the whole issues about remakes and remaster. And if you're interested in any of the stories that I'm going to be talking about, I'll have a link down in the description down below of this video, or if you're watching this on YouTube, to be exact. But we'll start off first with the quick My 2 Cent part. Stories that kind of caught my attention, though, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of the details. First one is that there are reports that the Ballin' Wonderworld, which has just came out to, well, let's just say the demo didn't really exactly impress everybody, to what many view as suspicious user reviews. Like, somewhat of some people are looking at it as it's like reverse review bombing a game rather than bad mouthing something. They're just praising it for no apparent reason, though. Some of the reviews seem a little bit off and sort of give that impression. I'm not saying all user reviews are like that, but there are some that kind of like, let's just say, sort of like raise a red flag and all that stuff. It'll be interesting to see how Ballin' Wonderworld does in terms of sales, whether the negative response it's gotten would impact it or not, so we'll have to wait and see on that. We also have a rating from the PEGIs that suggested that the XCOM Chimera, CHIMERA, could be making its way to the Nintendo Switch and other platforms. I believe that was released on the PC first, which, if it's true, that certainly is good news, and that might be the fact that maybe XCOM 2 sold very well on the Nintendo Switch. We also learned that PC fans are not happy with the PC version of Crash Bandicoot 4, as it seems it has a Battle.net always online requirement, which, though I'm not a PC gamer, I do think it is a little ridiculous to have an always online requirement, especially for a game that is a single-player experience. It seems kind of, stupid, to be exact, and I can understand why PC fans are not exactly, why PC fans wouldn't be happy with this and all. We also learned that the joke from last year's April Fools from Platinum Games, basically the game Solar Cresta, COLCRESTA, well, it turns out to be Platinum and Hamster are actually working on that game. So what was an April Fool's joke has now turned out to be a real game, to be exact, which is interesting because last year when they pulled that April Fool's joke, not everybody was on board with Platinum doing that, though. They weren't exactly happy with the way they executed that April Fool's joke and all that stuff. But assuming this is all correct, they made the announcement on April 1st, so some level of suspicion, but assuming this is correct, it looks like this game is going to happen. We also learned from the NPD that Crash Bandicoot 4 has climbed up to the weekly bestseller, mostly due to being on the new platforms, courtesy of the Nintendo Switch, PS5, and the Xbox Series S and X, and so forth. So it's certainly nice to see Crash Bandicoot 4 is getting the love it needs. So I played a bit of the game so far, and I will say I am enjoying the game. I do think there are some areas I feel it does improve upon Insane Trilogy to a certain degree. We also learned that Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch is going to be getting a performance and resolution boost, so the resolution will go up a little bit when you're playing it either in docked or handheld mode, which is certainly nice. Again, I'm not really a Fortnite fan or anything like that. The game doesn't really interest me, but there are those who do enjoy the game, and if you're playing it on the Nintendo Switch, look forward to seeing the GPU performance and the resolution boost. We also learned that supposedly, despite some rumors going around, it looks like while E3 would be happening or doing a digital version of E3, there won't be any paywall. This had to do with a comment that was made about the possibility that we could see something like a pay to see these kind of features and all that stuff, but it sounds like this has been dropped or something like that. Honestly, I think it would have been a stupid decision if the ESA did this with E3 this year. And last but not least, Microsoft has responded recently to the situation we've seen where Sony is shutting down, the PS Vita, PS3, and PSP stores, and Nintendo ending their Mario 35th anniversary, which I would say, on the side note on that, I do want to say I'm not a big fan of what Nintendo is doing, but I'm not completely losing sleep over it, though. I will, however, admit that I do think there was a missed opportunity in terms of putting, the Mario RPGs. I would have loved to see a Paper Mario collection or a Mario and Luigi collection as part of Mario's 35th anniversary, and I think that's a really damn shame for Nintendo. I think this was a missed opportunity on their part, to be exact. But anyway, Microsoft recently responded saying how it's important to preserve classic games and iconic games, which I would say they're not completely wrong on that, especially what we've seen lately with what Sony has done, and to some extent Nintendo has done as well. Although Nintendo somewhat better with their Switch online, with their NES or Super NES collection, though debatable depending on who you're asking, though. And I won't deny the fact that Microsoft has certainly done, as far as backwards compatibility, they've certainly done a hell of a good job with it, as far as, whole backwards compatibility and all that stuff. Okay, with the quick My 2 cent part now officially done, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with the developers Mistwalker, though. Now, for those who may not be aware, they recently put out their game Fantasia, or Fantasian. Apologize, I'm not saying the name correctly, though. But Nintendo fans like me would remember them as they were the ones that put out The Last Story. This game was part of what was at the time called the Operation Rainfall, which was a campaign to try to convince Nintendo of America to bring over games like Xenoblade Chronicles, The Last Story, and Pandora's Tower. Now, at the time, Nintendo made a comment that they had no plans to bring the game over, but there were some backlash against that comment, as many feel that Nintendo was focusing heavily on just the casual market, leaving the hardcore gamers coming off as, "We don't need you." Not to mention, that comment went as far as some people willing to mod their Wii's just to import these games, to be exact. Now, eventually, all three games would make their way over to basically to the Wii and come over here to the West. Xenoblade Chronicles would make its way over, and not to mention that game would see not only a port on the Wii, but see a port on the 3DS. It would also get another two more entries, Xenoblade Chronicles X, a game that I really think Nintendo needs to bring over to the Switch, given how well Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition has done, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But Last Story was one that was published by XC that handled that one, and that game did very well. Fast forward to today, though, only one of the Operation Rainfall games, the Xenoblade Chronicles series, has really sort of become sort of a staple for Nintendo, but the other two, Pandora's Tower and Mistwalker, I mean, the last story developed by Mistwalker, never really got a remaster or a remake port the way that Xenoblade Chronicles did, though. It's also pointing out that Mistwalker also did Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon, though. And it seems as though, as of right now, it's possible that a last story remake or remaster, or even or possibly a sequel, not 100% sure about that, may not be in the cards at this time, or it may not happen at all. In an article posted on Nintendo Life, it reads that, quote, "Earlier this week, we heard the mobile exclusive FANTASIAN could potentially be the last project for Final Fantasy creator and Mistwalker boss and Mistwalker boss before he steps down, or at least take a break." In the same interview with VGC, the head of Mistwalker was asked if the company would be up for remaster or remake of games such as The Last Story. While there are admittedly no plans right now, he's personally more attached to new ideas featuring original stories and world. The question was asked, quote, "The Last Story on Wii had something of a cult following. Once both parts of Fantasian, FANTASIN, have been released, do you have any interest whatsoever in remastering or remaking it, or even other Mistwalker games like Blue Dragon or Lost Odyssey?" And his response to this question was, quote, "To be perfectly honest, there aren't any plans for any remakes at the moment. Although they're called remakes, the amount of effort and resource it would command means the difference is basically NIL between development and a remake versus a completely new game. And I would personally find myself more attached to the idea of coming up with another original story or world, or building something new." Now, before I get into my comment on this, I do want to say, similar to what I said last week with the whole Mr. Sakurai explain why he's not, remaking, remaster, or doing an entry to Kid Icarus, I do want to say, for the record, I got nothing personal against the head of Mistwalker or anything like that. I have respect for him and so forth. And I do want to say that, like I said before, I'm not a game developer, so I wouldn't even know anything about developing video games and all that stuff. And I don't completely disagree with his comment about wanting to do something new or taking a break, just to make sure, like take a step back, possibly retire, he possibly could spend some quality times with friends and family, though. That said, I think at the same time it's also a missed opportunity here. And the reason why is I look at a game like Xenoblade Chronicles, for example, and look at how that was considered sort of like a game that many thought like Nintendo wouldn't bring over, and Nintendo didn't think it was that popular and all that stuff. And look how well that series has done, though. I mean, that has become much more of a staple for Nintendo than people realize. And on top of that, last year we had Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition released on the Nintendo Switch, and that did very well on the Nintendo Switch. So I personally think this is a missed opportunity, though, to basically remake or remaster The Last Story, and perhaps maybe reach an audience that maybe have missed out on it when it was originally released back on the Nintendo Wii. Same with, Lost Odyssey or Blue Dragon, and maybe update those games for an audience that may have missed out on it, though. Yes, it's possible resource could be an issue and all that stuff, but I do wonder if it would be a good idea to maybe collaborate or work with Nintendo to figure out how to bring, The Last Story to the Nintendo Switch. So I really think that this is truly a missed opportunity on Mistwalker's part. So overall, I get the fact that he wants to do something new and all that, and I get the fact that he probably wants to take a break, and all that, or possibly retire, to spend quality times with friends and family and all. But at the same time, I feel that this is a missed opportunity for Mistwalker, an opportunity to maybe bring some of their IPs that perhaps at this moment, especially with the success the Nintendo Switch is doing very well, an opportunity to bring these IPs alive, particularly The Last Story, though. I think a game like that, could do very well on the Nintendo Switch. As I mentioned with Fire Emblem, look at Luigi's Mansion, though. That's a niche title. Look how well Luigi's Mansion 3 did. Look how well the Fire Emblem series has done, though. Look at how that's become more of a staple for the series than Nintendo had realized. So I think to some degree, not in an insulting way, though, but to a certain degree, I think it's a missed opportunity on Mistwalker's part, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, and this one has to do with Monster Hunter Rise, and reports of some of it seem to be off to a very good start. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be talking about Monster Hunter Rise. Now, last week, this game, Monster Hunter Rise, came out, and it certainly had taken it's taken a lot of attention, taken a lot of people by storm. Sorry if I'm not saying the name correctly, though. And it has certainly gained a lot of positive buzz and all that stuff. I've been playing the game for the last couple of days, and honestly, I will say I am enjoying the game, even though I'm not a big Monster Hunter fan. I definitely like the wire bug and all. That is definitely a very neat feature for Capcom to add to the Monster Hunter franchise, and I would be very interested to see if the wire bug in some shape or form is used in like future Monster Hunter games and all that. And it's also very impressive that this is running on the RE engine on the Nintendo Switch. That is absolutely impressive all. And well, it seems as though that the positive buzz for Monster Hunter Rise might be paying off, as the game seems to be getting off to a good start and all. In an article first posted on Destructoid, though, it's been reported that let me get it up. It's reported that, quote, Capcom has proudly announced that its brand new release, Monster Hunter Rise, has gotten off to a brilliant start, with the company already shipping 4 million physical and digital copies of the fantasy adventure worldwide. We don't have sales numbers at this time, though. No sales numbers this time. It's just pointed out that they shipped 4 million copies, though. The action RPG, which launched on March 26th, is already winning over both critics and fans with its vibrant world and challenging quests, all powered by Capcom's proprietary RE engine. Monster Hunter Rise arrives at the time when the series has never been more of a household name, mainly thanks to the incredible success of 2018's Monster Hunter World, the publisher's best-selling game of all time. As an interesting comparison, Monster Hunter World shipped 5 million copies in the same period, but was across 2 platforms, PS4 and Xbox One, and then later made its way over to PC. As such, Monster Hunter Rise is on course to becoming another juggernaut for Capcom's portfolio. It's available on the Switch now, but it's also going to launch on PC in early 2022, sometime next year. So apparently this is good, I mean, for Capcom. For a Monster Hunter game designed specifically for the Nintendo Switch, or developed for the Switch first before coming to other platforms like the PC to be exact, this is definitely a good start. Granted, it's not the 5 million that Monster Hunter World got, but it's definitely nice to see that Monster Hunter World is definitely getting the attention it needs and all that stuff. And it's definitely something that I'm sure Switch fans are happy about, especially when Monster Hunter World came out. We had Monster Hunter Generation Ultimate, which certainly wasn't a bad game, don't get me wrong, but if you were coming from Monster Hunter World, you might view this as sort of like a step backwards rather than a step forward and all that. But either way, it's really, really good that Monster Hunter Rise is doing very well, and it's going to be really interesting to see how well the next entry, or shall we say, the Monster Hunter Stories 2, which will be out sometime this summer on the Nintendo Switch, how well that does. And it's supposedly reported that we'll see something like, if I'm getting this correctly, it says that that Monster Hunter Story 2 game will feature elements that can link with Monster Hunter Rise, and Capcom will no doubt be hoping for even more success when it arrives, though. So, obviously, the Switch is getting some Monster Hunter love, which certainly is a good thing. I'm glad Monster Hunter Rise is doing very well. I'm enjoying the game so far and all. However, there is one bad news about Monster Hunter Rise that, although this one, I can see this could be a big issue, particularly if you're saving your game and all that stuff. And this has to do from another article from, get it up, from Destructoid. It reads that, quote, Monster Hunter Rise seems to be selling well, but now that millions of people have their hands on it, they're starting to discover little nuisance, good and bad. In the case, it's kind of bad. The bug is no other than a save lockout situation, which is incredibly scary for some folks who have already put a lot of time with it. Capcom doesn't outright say that it deletes your data or anything like that. It can just prevent you from opening it. I know, but it seems fixable, and Capcom is on the case. A statement read from Capcom, it reads, quote, we're aware of an issue with the Action Hurt Pose DLC gesture where setting either to the action bar and quitting the game can cause an error, preventing you from opening the same save file for the next time you launch the game. We're working on an update to fix this ASAP. In the meantime, Capcom suggests that you avoid these gestures via action bar and or remove them ASAP from yourself now before the bug occurs. Capcom then clarified later that this also occurs when setting the action hurt pose on the radius menu. As a refresher, Monster Hunter Rise has a host of voice lines, emotes, and pictures that help facilitate online groups and breaks the language barrier. The action help hurt pose is one of those actions you can do in-game. They say be careful, which, ouch, that is not good, especially for those who might use that gesture and all that stuff. And that's obviously something I think Capcom should have addressed before the game is shipped. It's good that they are aware of this and are trying to fix the problem, but at the same time, I kind of feel like this should have been addressed before the game is launched. So obviously, it is advised you probably avoid that gesture ASAP until we know for certain it is officially fixed and all that stuff. But overall, I would say great that Monster Hunter Rise is off to a good start. It's going to be really interesting to see where it places is in the NPD charts and all that. But at the same time, there is reports of a glitch that happens during one of the gestures, so you might want to be very careful about using gestures in Monster Hunter Rise, especially if you're doing the online part, to be exact. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 3, and this one has to do with some information that has come out in regards of Project Triangle, the newest game from Square Enix that revolves using the visuals that was used in Octopath Traveler. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be talking about Square Enix's upcoming new game for the Nintendo Switch, Project Triangle, if I'm saying the name correctly, though. Now, last month, and I believe this was during one of Nintendo's Direct, though, this was one of the games that was announced using the visuals of the same HD 2D that Octopath Traveler, a favorite game of mine from 2018 and all that stuff. The game seems to be following the approach that's similar to the games that I played, like Disgaea and all that stuff, although more closer to the Final Fantasy tactics and all. It's also worth pointing out this game won't be out until next year, so we're probably going to have to be waiting a while. In the meantime, we have a demo that's available right now. I'm kind of going through it here and then if I have the time and all that stuff. But apparently some new information has come out in regards of Project Triangle, or whatever it's going to be called, although it could be taking the approach that Octopath Traveler had, which was, I believe that was called Project Octopath, and then they kept that name and went with Octopath Traveler. But anyway, in an article posted on Nintendo Life, if I can get it up, it was an interesting comments in terms of gameplay, how much hours you could get out of it, and it reads, quote, Last month, Nintendo revealed Project Triangle Strategy, a Square Enix turn-based tactical RPG launched exclusively on the Nintendo Switch next year. So far, there's been the demo and even a survey for the game, and now during a Game Live Japan YouTube broadcaster, the producer of that game has revealed what players can expect in terms of length. The aim is to deliver around 50 hours of gameplay, though. Here's a full translation, courtesy of Nintendo Everything. We are planning for the game to have multiple endings. As for the game time, that's still up in the air. We always aim for around the 50-hour mark, but it's never seemed to turn out that way. In a follow-up question, the producers was asked when players could expect to hear more about Project Triangle Strategy. They hope to make some announcement at some point before it gets cold. So that to me isn't really that surprising to hear the fact that we might see like up to 50 hours of gameplay. I mean, Fire Emblem Three Houses has you playing 3 different of the houses in that game and all that stuff, and each one has their own, different endings and so forth. So it's not really that surprising though, and judging by some of the game though, there are certainly choices and consequences. So doing one thing will impact this part of the game, doing another thing or doing something different might impact it differently and all that stuff. So I could see where there's a lot of, where in terms of the hours of gameplay, along with the combat, to basically right down to replayability. So it really doesn't surprise me if this game is like 50 hours long or 50 hours of gameplay and all. That might appeal for some people, it may not, but either way, it's interesting though, and it's a nice one. And I'm looking forward to seeing this game when it comes out to the Nintendo Switch next year. Though it will be really interesting to see if we get another demo like we've done with Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default 2. But for right now, there's only one demo available for this game for Project Triangle. So overall, the fact that it could have 50 hours of gameplay is, though, certainly long for some people. It really isn't that surprising, considering, judging by what I've read about this game so far, it does sound like there will probably be some replayability in some ways, in some form, including some of the choices and possible consequences for your action in Project Triangle, though. Also, it will be very interesting to see what the final name for this game, if it uses the name Triangle or uses something different like we saw with Octopath Traveler and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part, and that has to do with CDProject Red and Cyberpunk 2077. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video. And for this one, we're going to be taking a look at CDProject Red and Cyberpunk 2077. Now, CDProject Red reputation really took a nosedive following the release of Cyberpunk 2077, a very highly anticipated game that launched in the poorest state possible, particularly on the PS4 and the Xbox One. The only saving grace that we saw with that game was that it was released on Stadia, which ironically it ran better on Google Stadia, believe it or not, at a time when Stadia was not at the best point that they were right now. In fact, it did so well on Stadia that they ran out of their Founders Edition controllers, or I think their controller and setup, when they did a promotion with the game and all that stuff. PC, it also ran very well, although that depended on your setup on your PC. And interestingly enough, supposedly the Xbox Series S version basically ran that game. It ran well, supposedly, or ran better on the Xbox Series S, supposedly earning the nickname of "This is what we should have gotten from the PS4 and the Xbox One version." Combined with the issues of the development and crunch time, it really led to an embarrassment for CD Projekt Red that forced them to apologize, although some think it was half-hearted and all that, and forced them to sort of rethink their strategy going forward and all. And in several articles from The Verge, it seems that we have not only a new fix for it, which is a huge fix for Cyberpunk 2077, but apparently a new strategy that CD Projekt Red is going to implement, supposedly, going forward. And two articles from The Verge. The first one points out about the latest patch, and it reads that, quote, CD Projekt Red released an update for Cyberpunk 2077 with 100 of bugs fixed. Patch 1.2, a 34 gigabyte or more download depending on the platform, is live on PC consoles with a Stadia update coming this week, although supposedly that update is now available for Stadia. Fixes range from quality of life improvement to game crashing bugs, including improvement to vehicles, police force, NPC behaviors, quests, and much more. The full list is available on the game's website. CD Projekt Red released its first major patch back in January, and updates, it said, lay the groundwork for future fixes. The latest patch was delayed after hackers access the developer's internal network, forcing developers to push the release back to late March. CD Projekt Red's work is far from done. The game launched late last year and has been nothing short of a disaster. Cyberpunk's release included widespread bugs across several platforms. Sony pulled the game from its online store in December of last year and began issuing full refunds. I mean, that situation was bad, though. Although supposedly this patch would fix a lot of the stuff, there has been some reports that not as much as many people had hoped for. But in an article in another article from The Verge, it says that CD Projekt Red is changing how it makes games after disastrous Cyberpunk 2077 launch, though. It reads, quote, Polish game studio CD Projekt Red announced a sweeping restructuring plan on Tuesday, just months after the disastrous launch of its much-hyped title, Cyberpunk 2077. One of the key goals of the new plan brings a change in the way the studio develops video games, according to a press release. The change will allow CD Projekt Red to work on multiple AAA games and expansions in parallel, starting in 2022. Cyberpunk 2077 launched in December after years of hype. The first teaser trailer for the game was released in January 2013, and following the huge success of CD Projekt Red's The Witcher 3, expectations were sky high for the studio's Cyberpunk RPG, especially following the glitzy and action-packed trailers shown in the months leading up to the game's launch. But the game released after multiple delays and reports 6 days work week for the developers ahead of launch was riddled with bugs and performance issues when it was finally available, particularly on older console. The performance was bad enough that Sony took the extraordinary step of removing Cyberpunk 2077 from the PlayStation Store and offering refunds. 100 days later, Cyberpunk 2077 still hasn't returned to the store. In the months since launch, CD Projekt Red released a number of hotfixes, updates, and even hotfixes for the updates in an attempt to show up Cyberpunk's 2077 issues and get it running smoothly. Just yesterday, the studio released an update with hundreds of fixes, though there still seem to be some hilarious bugs. Many of the plans announced on Tuesday seem to be in service of preventing another high-profile fiasco. One major change is that CD Projekt Red plans to change how it proprietary the Red engine game engine is developed, which could improve performance for future games. The studio Red engine technology will be improved and centralized while reorganizing the studio as a set of interdisciplinary AGILE teams will transform the way games are developed, making the approach more productivity, CD Projekt Red said. Theoretically, these changes could prevent issues in future games where a game runs much more poorly on older consoles, like many experienced with Cyberpunk 2077. Single-player RPGs will remain our priority, the studio's Senior Vice President of Business Development said in a statement, and you can expect to see more of Cyberpunk and The Witcher. We're also perceived the huge potential of both The Witcher and Cyberpunk, and we want to expand their reach into new areas, media, and content types, the Senior Vice President said. Despite the focus on single-player, CD Projekt Red does plan to extend its game's online capability capability, though the studio wasn't specific about what those features might be. These online features will be gradually rolled out to CD Projekt Red games, the studio said, and perhaps reorganize that to the year-long promotion campaign for Cyberpunk 2077 may have backfired. CD Projekt Red committed to changing how it promotes its future games. Future marketing campaigns will be much shorter, with promotion content released closer to the actual release of the given game, presenting its operation on all supportive hardware platforms, CD Projekt Red said. The company is also committed to publishing a new roadmap each year. The studio also committed to improving working conditions for its employees. CD Projekt Red will remain an exclusive and diverse working place. However, we want to empathize the well-being of our employees and provide them with professional and personal development opportunities, the studio head said in a statement. CD Projekt Red did not provide further specific about what changes to be made. On top of that, it seems as though that the multiplayer part of Cyberpunk 2077 may have pulled the plug on that one. It reads that, quote, and this is from Video Game Chronicles, it reads that given let me see, it said here it is. It says that, quote, CD Projekt Red suggested in January 2020 that its Cyberpunk multiplayer project would be its own AAA release rather than a Cyberpunk 2077 add-on. And last November, one of their CD Projekt Red called it a separate, dedicated production, a big production, and we think of it as a standalone product. However, on the video that they released Tuesday, previously we hinted that our next AAA game would be multiplayer Cyberpunk game, but we have decided to reconsider this now. So in other words, it sounds like there is a possibility that the multiplayer part is sort of, they pulled the plug on it. Personally, I would say to some degree this is definitely a step in the right direction, but I will have to say more work is going to have to be done. I mean, CD Projekt Red really hurt their reputation after what happened with Cyberpunk 2077 though. And while I haven't experienced any major bugs since I've been playing it on Stadia and all that stuff, I can't deny the fact that there are people who are looking forward to this game, but were utterly disappointed with the way it turned out when the game officially launched and all. Hopefully we'll see what if these new fixes and all would basically put the game at a level that people can be happy with and all that stuff. And time will tell if CD Projekt Red sticks to that though. I will say that they're going into their next games, whatever next game it may be, whether it's a Cyberpunk or another Witcher game, CD Projekt Red is going into it in a very tough spot because of what happened with Cyberpunk 2077. They're really going to have to figure out a way to knock it out of the ballpark with their next game, and it's going to be very challenging for them. Like I said, I don't think it's impossible, but there's definitely going to be some challenge and all. So, and the fact that the multiplayer, it sounds like they pulled the plug on it, wouldn't be really surprising considering the whole, pardon my language, the whole shitstorm that Cyberpunk 2077 pulled and all that. So, overall, I will say, based on what their strategy is going forward, it definitely sounds like it's a step in the right direction, but time will tell if they have learned from their mistake for what happened with Cyberpunk 2077. And I will say, whatever their next game is, whether it's the next Cyberpunk entry in the Cyberpunk series or another entry in the Witcher series or something completely different, they're going to have to work really hard to convince a lot of people why they should pick up their game. Cyberpunk 2077 definitely had a negative impact on CD Projekt Red and its fans, and I still do believe that CD Projekt Red is going to have to work really hard to convince people why they should give them another chance. So they certainly got their work cut out. Doesn't mean they can't recover from this. I'm not saying they can't, but it's definitely in a it's definitely them. They're still in sort of a very difficult spot, but we'll see if they can stick to this roadmap. We'll see if they've learned their lessons or not. So, in other words, time will ultimately tell. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Mistwalker and their comments about they're not interested in reviving or remaking or remastering some of their older games like The Last Story or Lost Odyssey? Do you think that's the right call for them, though? Do you think it's sort of a missed opportunity to probably reach out to an audience that may have missed out on this game and all? What are your thoughts about hearing about Monster Hunter Rise shipping about 4 million copies to retailers? Do you think this game is off to a good start? Do you think this game will be a success? And what about the report about this glitch or bug with the doing the gestures and all that stuff? Do you think it's a very troublesome? Do you think that they'll fix the problem? Are you planning to avoid this gesture at all costs? What are your thoughts about Project Triangle? Are you looking forward to this new game from Square Enix that's using the same visuals that Octopath Traveler have? Are you okay with like 50 hours of gameplay? Are you not okay with that? And finally, what are your thoughts about CDProject Red's strategy going forward, especially with Cyberpunk 2077? Do you think this is a step in the right direction for CDProject Red? Do you think they will learn their lessons for what happened with Cyberpunk 2077, or do you feel like they'll end up just making the same mistake as they did before? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, I forgot to mention, if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure to hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. So, but anyway, this concludes this My 2 Cent video, and I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that will be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!